Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. So I just finished my master's at the University of Victoria, and when I heard about the conference theme, I was really inspired by a recent trip home I took to London, because I was on the Underground or the Tube, and I kept seeing these adverts for ABBA Voyage. And I was like, what is this? Well, it's a 90-minute live performance in which the band appear as holographic avatars, or avatars, as they call them, in a purpose-built arena, and they've used AI de-aging software to create the appearance of the band as they were in their sort of 1970s prime. So for the next few minutes, I hope to use this ABBA Voyage as a case study to explore how it's transforming our approach to live performance and musical performance as both a creative act and as a commercial product. And I think it really challenges our understanding of the way we think about liveness as a concept. And I'm actually particularly reminded of kind of scholars such as Karl Marx, who talked about the idea of alienating the commodity from the labor in kind of late-stage capitalism. And I'm sort of thinking, wow, this is really an entire separation of the physical act of performing, that physical labor of dancing on a stage, from the commodity, this young, digitized version of the musician. I think it's quite prevalent, especially as, you know, we were just having a conversation over lunch about how scary deep fakes are. And we are really seeing online sort of a surge in celebrity mimicry, AI deepfakes, and it's now even possible for us to take our favorite stars and perform a duet with them using kind of false versions of their voices. So there's really a transforming relationship that we have with celebrity culture in the AI age, as it were. So, oh, is this working, or am I doing it wrong? Oh, yes. Thank you. So they describe their performance as blurring the lines between physical and digital. So the 4 band members of ABBA, all of whom are still alive today, appear as de-aged versions of themselves. But they actually did perform and record themselves singing and doing choreography. And then they had younger body doubles also perform the choreography using motion capture. All of their kind of physicality, their gestures, and their movements were captured and mapped onto holographic versions of the band. So it's actually made in collaboration with Industrial Light and Magic, and that's actually the visual effects company owned by George Lucas, so you have them to thank for The Phantom Menace. He applied de-aging technology to recreate this appearance of younger celebrities, but also in their purpose-built arena, they use projection onto numerous LED screens and tricks of lighting to kind of create this illusion of three-dimensional performers, but in actual fact, they're a two-dimensional sort of spectre. So it's worth noting that actually the use of holograms and holographic technology is not a new phenomena. Actually, Tupac Shakur appeared before an audience at Coachella in 2012, and this often uses a trompe-l'oeil from early theatre. So I've got an image here of what's known as the Pepper's Ghost trick, which is where a reflection appears onto a pane of glass, and using lighting and mirrors in the theatre, they could project a hidden image to the audience and make it appear as if it was within the 3D scene. And this kind of technology has been applied to several kind of deceased stars. We've got Whitney Houston, Roy Orbison, and Michael Jackson have all been given this holographic treatment. Jenna Ing talks about ABBA Voyage, and she says that there is a key difference here because ABBA are living artists who've decided to reproduce themselves in this form. And she describes this as a temporal discombobulation, which is a great word. So you've really got this slippage between the present-day ABBA, who are alive and perform, their past selves, who were famous in the 1970s, and now this kind of old past self who's been projected into the present and perhaps the future. So it's really disrupted our understanding of the celebrity as somebody who belongs to a kind of finite cultural moment and really belongs to a particular time and a temporal period. When the tour was announced, several users really reacted quite strongly to the announcement that ABBA intended to perform in this way. Many kind of cited concerns around authenticity and the idea that they would have a lack of emotional and physical closeness to the band if they performed in this way. The idea of live performance really, for some, hinges on that experience of being in the space with your sort of fan object, the object of your admiration. And some really argued that the spectacle and the artifice of holograms would really limit that. And Owen Myers from The Guardian also dubbed this practice ghost slavery. There's some real ethical concerns here, and particularly around the idea of recreating deceased stars and selling their veneer as an alternative to the real flesh and blood performance. He says it raises concerns about consent, authenticity, and the moral rights of those no longer here to voice their opinions. And I would say it also kind of extends even to living artists. At what point do you sign over the rights to your image, and what are the long-term implications of that? Media and new technologies are very powerful tools. They're also very lucrative tools for invoking memory and nostalgia. Katharina Niemeyer writes a book, Media and Nostalgia, and she discusses the way in which media and nostalgia are so enwrapped in one another that media both creates nostalgia and uses it as a selling point. In popular music and in postmodern culture, there's quite a lot of appropriation. Samples are used quite often in pop music, covers. So we get quite a lot of layering of past and present in this sort of pastiche. ABBA are doing what I would argue is very postmodern pastiche. They're drawing on their past catalogue. Their costumes have been described as retro-futurist. They've really blended the glam rock 70s kitsch camp aesthetic with newer fabrics, plex and neoprene. And the result is really this shiny veneer of the past as a commodity. There is appeal to an intergenerational audience. Older fans can say, I relived the experience of seeing ABBA in their youth, whereas new fans can actually have the opportunity to see the band in their prime, as it were. And audience participation, as you can see, is encouraged with fans dressing up. I also thought it was really interesting that they chose to do this residency in London. When you think about how ABBA came to prominence in the UK, it was through the Eurovision Song Contest, which is a very kind of highly politicized event in which European nations kind of compete for a prize in a friendly competition. And I think at a time when London is increasingly kind of alienated from our European neighbours, invoking this idea of shared European experience and cultural togetherness is quite an interesting choice. I am actually in film studies, so I thought, well, film and TV are also making use of these de-aging technologies, and that's quite interesting because film is a time-based medium, so it's always, in a way, been able to invoke memories and been able to preserve people in their youth on screen. But there's been a rise in the use of visual effects synthespians, which is a term that describes the synthetic or virtual actor. So recent films such as The Irishman and, Gemini Man, have used this technology to have actors either appear alongside their younger selves or as their younger selves. And I argue that that really reshapes the way that we think of the labor value of the actor when they can play multiple roles beyond their sort of corporeal limits and when they can extend their career far beyond the time period that they would have previously been in the limelight. And for some, there's been kind of talk of this creating kind of infinite reproduction and stagnation in an industry in Hollywood that is arguably very elitist, or maybe not even arguably, just very elitist. If we continually resurrect and de-age the current slate of stars and the stars of the moment, are we creating sort of a closed loop of talent and leaving little room for new actors and new figures to rise to prominence? And I was thinking of Walter Benjamin when he was talking in I guess it's the second industrial revolution. Are we arguing about that? But he talked about the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. And I think you can almost think about the actor as being mechanically reproduced ad infinitum and losing what he would call the aura, really losing their sense of soul or what is unique and temporary about them in the moment that they are performing. And I have to thank Peter for already giving you a preview, because when we consider where this might go at the edge of possibility, we can see actually entirely holographic performers emerging, those who have no real life kind of referent, no real life performer to be tied back to. So Hatsune Miku is a Japanese Vocaloid who appears as an anthropomorphic mascot on stage. She can sing and dance, choreographed and compose routines that are created using her Vocaloid software. Users can also program the software and upload their creations to Nico Nico Douga and YouTube. Elisa Michaud really highlights that Hatsune Miku is quite a predictable performer. So we lose that sense of spontaneity when she's on stage. She's always going to hit every mark and every note, unless you program her not to. However, she does suggest that there is an element of authenticity and an element of liveness to the performance. The crowds who oftentimes have purchased or worked with the Vocaloid software beforehand can participate in kind of rituals of fandom online, and I know, Peter, you talked about this in more length. They can dress as the singer, they can rehearse pre-choreographed routines, and participate in a sort of a creative meaning-making of their own. So the creative value, perhaps, can be derived from the crowdsource component, and I'm thinking about Ada and how much of her creative value is actually derived from the collective meaning around her and the provocation. So just to conclude perhaps some ending thoughts, I think that maybe optimistic, but also very, very cautious would be how I'd characterize it. So ABBA Voyage is a development in a rapidly growing realm of artificial performance technology. It shows how we can externalize the body and the choreographed performer as a digital being. So we can essentially create a new performing body, and we can almost reference a past that never existed. This 1970s avatar is a past that never existed, disrupting notions of chronology and the idea of having a finite experience with a living performer. For some, we're really devaluing and diminishing the notion of liveness and live music and the interaction and closeness between the performer and the audience. The performer becomes this reproducible commodity, this product, which really builds on the idea of the alienated commodity, a digital spectacle who has no aura. However, there are opportunities for cultural meaning through collective experience and through invocation of memory or nostalgia. And for some, there are new possibilities. We could have infinite ABBAs, whatever that means for us. We could have ABBA in every country in the world simultaneously. So we can really I guess, overcome some of the limitations of kind of physical aging, of the performers becoming very tired, or geographical boundaries. However, we also really, really need to think about the question of agency, autonomy, and ownership. Whose bodies are we reproducing, and how are we using this digital labor for exploitation or for commodification? So I'll stop there, but thank you for listening.